Hi guys! Today, we're traveling back to ancient Egypt to experience what it would be like to live just one day under the scorching sun, wearing only thin linen, surviving on stale bread and watery beer, and enduring back-breaking labor without modern comforts. We'll explore how religion ruled every decision, how disease spread through polluted Nile water, and how social classes determined who thrived and who struggled. Get ready for a journey through mud brick homes, sand-blasted skin, and the ever-present fear of illness and death. If you enjoy this deep dive into history, hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up and comment below telling us which ancient hardship surprised you the most. Picking up where we left off, you wake at dawn under the scorching sun of ancient Egypt. Even before sunrise, you feel heat pressing down, searing through your thin linen tunic. You step out onto cracked earth that feels like hot coals beneath your sandals. There is no shade, only endless sand stretching toward the horizon. The air is thick with dust, and a faint haze hangs over the land. Your morning begins with a single piece of flatbread made from coarse emmer wheat and a small cup of watery beer. There are no fruits or fresh vegetables, just a gritty loaf that scratches against your teeth and a bitter brew that barely quenches your thirst. You swallow quickly, knowing you must hurry to the fields where laborers gather to harvest grain. By mid-morning, your hands are blistered from gripping rough reeds as you bind harvested stalks. The sun climbs higher, and sweat pours down your face, stinging your eyes. You search for water, and remember that the Nile supplies most towns, but reaching it means detouring through narrow paths where crocodiles lurk. Reluctantly, you scoop murky water from a small canal, hoping it has been filtered through sand, and drink, praying it does not bring disease. Despite attempts at filtration, waterborne parasites and bacteria thrive, leading many to suffer from dysentery and fevers. You finish the murky drink with urgency, knowing that each swallow might carry unseen threats. The overseer arrives on a donkey, cracking his whip at any sign of slow work. You bend again to lift heavy baskets of grain mussels, straining under the weight. Each step feels like carrying a boulder across an oven floor. Supervisors patrol the rows of laborers, and if they catch anyone resting too long, punishment follows: extra tasks or lashes from a braided whip. Complaints are seen as insults to Ra, the sun god, so there is no room for mercy. By midday, you shift to the nearby quarry, where massive limestone blocks wait to become part of a pharaoh's monument. You join a team hauling a 1,000-pound block on a wooden sledge. Each of you grips the ropes tightly as water is poured ahead to ease friction. Your arms tremble, your back arches, and when the block finally creaks into motion, a collective cheer rises, though the effort leaves you gasping for air. As you rest for a moment beneath a makeshift shade, you recall that religion governs every aspect of life. Priests oversee rituals meant to appease gods like Osiris and Sekhmet, hoping to ward off famine plague and divine wrath. Even your labor is offered as tribute. Each stone you lay is a whispered prayer to immortality. You wonder if the divine can feel the sweat in your eyes or hear the grain breaking under your fingers. When the overseer decrees a break, you gather beneath a small canopy of woven reeds. Your meal is more coarse bread and a handful of salted fish, dry and tough. A cup of diluted beer washes it down, and for a moment, you wonder how anyone finds pleasure in such a diet. You sit amid exhausted laborers, their clothes drenched in sweat, their eyes hollow from hunger. In wealthier homes, families dine on onions, dates, and roasted meats, luxuries you can only imagine. As afternoon deepens, a faint breeze drifts across the fields. You seize the moment, feeling relief as the wind cools your burning skin. But the air carries dust that scratches your throat and nostrils. You wipe sweat from your brow and prepare for the final stretch of work, weaving palm fronds into mats. You wade into a grove near the Nile, where irrigation channels keep palms alive. Cutting long fronds, you bind them into bundles, aware that each mat you weave will line the floors of a wealthy household. Dusk approaches, and the sun's glare softens to a golden haze. You wrap a coarse woolen shawl around your shoulders, borrowed from a fellow laborer, and walk back to the communal quarters. The temperature drops, suddenly making your sunburned skin sting. You gather near a small fire pit, grateful for the embers' warmth. Around you, cricket chirps, and distant jackal howls announce the desert night. You lie on your reed mat, the rough fibers poking your skin, and stare at the woven straw ceiling above. Nighttime in Egypt can bring a surprising chill, and for a moment you shiver despite the lingering heat of the day. There is no mattress or blanket, only that scratchy mat and a borrowed shawl. You recall how richer families sleep on linen or woven reed beds protected from the chill by thick coverings. In the darkness, you think of the grand pyramids and temples shaped by hands like yours. For pharaohs and nobles, these monuments secure eternal life. For laborers, they stand as monuments to unending toil. You wonder if any elite ever feel the same blistering pain in their shoulders or hunger gnawing at their insides. Dreams of cool water and shaded groves fill your mind, a stark contrast to the reality you endure. As you drift toward sleep, you recall the prayers you whispered at dawn, pleas to Isis and Osiris to grant you mercy tomorrow. Tomorrow you will rise once more to face the sun's tyranny, wielding tools heavier than your hope. Yet in this moment, between day and night, you cling to a slender thread of faith that your labor serves a purpose greater than suffering. One day, you hope someone in the distant future will know your story and understand the human cost of building an empire under the desert sun. Social hierarchy is clear. Pharaohs and priests dine on roasted meats while you subsist on coarse bread and salted fish. Yet in hardship, you find solidarity. As you drift into rest, you pray for a cooler breeze and strength to haul another block. One day, your story may stand as proof of endurance under the desert sun. Picking up from the scorching heat of sunrise, the next trial you face involves the linen tunic on your back. The fabric is thin, barely shielding your skin from the blazing sun. You pull it down, feeling how quickly it absorbs sweat, clinging to your damp skin. Already by mid-morning, the tunic radiates heat, pressing the sun's fierce rays directly into your flesh, reminding you of your vulnerability. You step into the courtyard, where few palm trees cast slender shadows. Mud brick walls, baked by the sun, glow like embers. You adjust the tunic's straps, hoping to let any breeze touch bare skin. In this land, breathability means vulnerability. Other laborers pull at their tunics similarly. Some cut them shorter to expose legs. Others knot straps to lift hems. A man near you has smeared dark mud across his forehead and cheeks. He nods and says, "This keeps the worst away for a while." You try it, but it soon cracks and flakes away. Earlier you saw wealthier travelers near the canal. Their robes were thicker and embroidered. They coated skin with scented oils, sandalwood juniper traces of myrrh. Their attendant applied oil, carefully shielding them from the sun. You longed for that protection, but knew it was beyond your means. You approach a merchant as he carries a small clay jar. You plead for ointment. He shows oil with a sweet aroma. You haggle and trade part of your barley ration. Smearing the oil across your chest, you feel a cooling barrier. Sweat beads and rolls off. You return to the field, hopeful the effect lasts. Working among barley stalks, you notice the oil keeps your skin cooler. The overseer walks by in spotless linen, his skin unburned. He stands apart, a symbol of privilege. You worry your oil will fade before dusk. At noon, under a palm's scant shade, you and fellow laborers eat barley bread and sip watered-down beer. Sweat stains your tunic. Many drape damp cloths around heads. Others wipe faces with scraps. They eye your oil-streaked skin with envy. Though you have little wealth, you feel a moment's superiority. Afternoon demands more labor. You walk to a canal to refill your water skin. The dark water feels cool on your fingers. You splash it on the back of your neck and tie a damp scrap of linen into a scarf. The relief is brief but sweet. Carrying harvested grain, you pass priests emerging from a temple. Their garments are pristine white linen with gold trim. Each step part, ritual part, show of status. Their skins are unmarred by sun. You recall tales of linen's sacred purity, but today your tunic is stained and frayed. By late afternoon, you trudge to the kiln yard, where mud bricks await molding. Heat radiates from freshly fired bricks. You join brickmakers, shaping clay until your arms ache. A woman pats oil on her arms before pressing clay. She wears a slightly thicker tunic. You envy her foresight. Dusk brings relief. You head to the canal, soaking your tunic in cool water. Once stiff with sweat and dust, it sags with moisture. You tie it around your shoulders like a wet shawl, feeling the chill release you from the day's grip. At the communal hut, you hang your tunic on a peg. You examine tiers along the hem and prepare a crude bone needle. You begin stitching frayed edges, renewing the fabric's strength. Repairing your tunic feels like restoring armor. It holds more than your body, it holds dignity. Inside the mud brick walls hold warmth from the day. The air is heavy. You lie on a straw bundle, and your tunic rests beside you. You reflect on how clothing in ancient Egypt marks status, faith, and ingenuity. The pharaohs wear linen as symbol of purity. You need it simply to survive. As night deepens, you rub the remaining oil on your face. You fold a strip of linen as a headband. Outside, the moon glows over dunes. In those silver shadows, you feel vulnerable yet resilient. Tomorrow, you will don your repaired tunic, apply mud or oil, and endure. Each thread tells the story of your struggle under Ra's gaze. You think back to your childhood when you watched local weavers twist flax fibers by hand. The process was intricate, harvesting stalks from the riverbanks, breaking them gently, and spinning fine threads on wooden spindles. Threads were then woven into strips of cloth on a simple loom. Each tunic you wear began as a careful ritual, honoring the gods with prayers as the shuttle passed through warp and weft. That craftsmanship once inspired awe, but now, as an adult facing the sun's cruelty, you only wonder if any cloth could ever truly shield you. During a moment of rest, you inspect the weave pattern. Tiny irregularities hint that it may have come from a weaver's apprentice. The threads here appear looser than a master's work, and you suspect the fabric will not last many seasons. You recall overhearing that some families have special tunics stored for festivals, cloth bleached so white it glows at sunrise, and woven so densely it offers slight protection against heat. Yet those remain out of reach for laborers like you. Instead, you labor until you can afford a second tunic to alternate and extend their lifespans. Returning to the field's edge, you meet your neighbor as he rubs oil onto his forehead. His tunic bears colorful stripes, likely dyed with ochre or indigo. He tells you he traded a small goat for that cloth, truly a miracle. Over time, you have learned to adjust your movements. When the sun is highest, you crane your neck toward the horizon and position your body so that the tunic's folds catch stray winds. You angle yourself beneath any scrap of shade, often the shadow of a tall reed or a borrowed clay pot. These small tactics offer fleeting respite, but you cling to them like blessings. You believe one day you might gather enough barley to afford finer cloth a tunic that endures longer under Ra's unyielding gaze. Before drifting to sleep, you recall a tale how flax once grew with blessing, how linen connects mortal to divine. In that moment, the tunic, though stained, feels sacred. It reminds you that survival here requires resourcefulness, strength, and faith. You close your eyes knowing dawn's sun will return, but you rest hoping your tunic repairs and oil will carry you through another day. You rise before sunrise, hoping for a cooler hour, but the earth betrays you immediately. Sand and stone radiate heat from yesterday's sun. Each step feels like walking on embers, and even before the sky brightens, you sense the oven beneath your sandals. You land on the balls of your feet to minimize contact, but heat burns through thin layers of papyrus. Your path leads past mud brick huts. These bricks glow like coals. Narrow passages trap heat between walls, turning strolls into marathons. You navigate by memory, seeking tiny cracks in the bricks where shadows linger. Each jagged step over sun-baked clay feels punishing. Memories of lush meadows mock you. Grass cool under bare feet in childhood. Now fields near the Nile seem inhospitable. Loose stones and shards of pottery litter the ground. Some fragments retain moisture from morning mists and feel cooler. You step on these pieces careful to avoid cuts that could fester. Here infection can be a death sentence. Ahead, a donkey ambles by, carrying clay jars of water. You hurry toward its shade and scoop water to wet the path. Poured water transforms sand into a fleeting patch of refuge. Once damp, the sand's heat drops briefly. You stand on moist grains, savoring relief, but moisture evaporates and heat returns swiftly. You lift your foot and press onward. A palm grove appears next, its fronds swaying. You hurry through open land. As you near sand, shifts to looser grains. Beneath palms, you remove sandals and press toes into damp sand by an irrigation channel. Cool relief floods your senses, though sun filters through fronds, casting flickering heat and shade. You remain low, grateful for the murmur of breeze. Even the wind seems reluctant to blow here. Each breeze carries heated dust, reminding you that shade and moisture offer little mercy. Your destination lies beyond. You slip sandals back on and head to a brickmaking yard. Rows of drying bricks stand like sentinels, each absorbing sun's fury. You skirt edges, treading on narrow strips of earth, still moist. Your sandals slip when clay clings to them, mixing with sand. You tread cautiously, aware a fall could injure you. At the site, workers mold fresh mud bricks. You join them kneeling to press clay into molds. Each brick feels warm, as if bearing sun's imprint. Your grip is careful. Clay sticking to fingertips will burn your skin. After molding bricks, you stack them on a wooden sled over narrow channels of water that cool the surface slightly. Yet the air remains sweltering. You rest briefly, pressing palms against a shaded wall of mud brick. Bricks beneath roof stay cooler, insulated from direct sun. You watch a coworker smear mud over his ankles to protect skin. Mud retains moisture, offering relief as it dries. You dip fingers into a shallow puddle and coat ankles. The mud dries quickly, drawing heat from your skin before cracking away. Your break ends. You lift the sled and haul bricks across the yard. Each step tests your resolve. You cross a narrow walkway on an earthen embankment. Below, a channel of water trickles cooling earth enough that a strip feels bearable. You uncup sandals and traverse barefoot when letting moist mud shield soles. Once on solid ground, you slip sandals back on and deliver bricks to masons on a low scaffold. There, you hand bricks upward. Each brick feels scorching, as though forged in daylight. The mason does not pause. He positions bricks for a tomb entrance facing the Nile. His robes are smooth linen, appearing weightless compared to your mud-caked garments. He nods at you, acknowledging your effort. Pride surges amid exhaustion. Descending new pain greets you. The sun's arc intensifies heat beneath your feet. Horizons blur with shimmering air. You whisper a silent prayer to Ra, seeking strength. Too much water draws heat into skin, too little invites dehydration. On your return, you seek refuge under a half-built arch. Its slender shadow casts on scorching ground. You crouch low, pressing knees to surprisingly cool earth beneath. Bricks overhead block sun, yet heat radiates through them. You breathe shallowly, sweat-crusting lips. Nearby, other laborers fan themselves with palm fronds and massage blistered feet. One scrapes chilled mud from a trough to smear on his forehead. Slowly, their breathing steadies, though their bodies still ache. You share a piece of coarse bread with a fellow laborer, dipping it into thin porridge. It does little to quell hunger, but sustains. Ancient texts describe bread and beer as staples, yet you now know why calories drive relentless work, but hunger lingers. Afternoon wanes. You press on toward the palm grove again. The sun's intensity wanes slightly, and ground begins to cool. By the time you reach palms, twilight's glow softens harsh edges. You remove sandals, arching feet into damp sand. Pain ebbs with each breath. You rest back against a date palm, grateful for cool earth. Your final act is returning to your quarters, a mud brick hut by the riverbank. The path winds over flat fields, still warm but decreasing in intensity. Each step is a choice between haste and pain. Memories of pyramid grandeur blur with present hardship. Now you see beauty in simple survival. At the hut, you remove sandals and inspect wounds, blisters forming redness, hinting at deeper burns. You wash feet in tepid water, feeling immediate relief as moisture soothes aching tissue. You wrap toes in linen scraps, hoping bandages shield them. You lie on a thin straw mat, pressing soles to ground cool from evening's breath. Yet in such struggle, determination becomes a shield against despair. Night falls. You close your eyes, certain that at dawn you will rise once to face the burning ground. Morning light filters through a crack in the mud brick wall, and your stomach tugs, reminding you that sustenance must come first. You head to a communal hearth where a pot of barley porridge simmers over embers. Laborers gather each with a wooden bowl. Steam rises, mingling with dusty air. You step forward and receive your portion, thick, gritty barley porridge boiled in water. No milk, no sweeteners, only coarse grains that scrape your tongue. You scoop a spoonful and lift it to your lips. The bitter flavor lingers, but you swallow grateful for any nourishment. Next, you break a piece from a small loaf of flatbread. Dense and heavy, it is made from emmer wheat and barley. The crust is hard, the interior crumbly. You press the bread into the porridge, watching it absorb moisture and soften. Bits of grain cling to your beard as you chew. Each bite reminds you of childhood meals sweetened with honey luxuries now beyond reach. Your mother's bowl is gone, replaced by this communal pot. Across the yard, the overseer stands like a judge. His linen tunic gleams in dawn's glow, a sign of privilege. He lifts a hand, and laborers freeze for a moment before scooping more porridge. You finish swiftly, leaving crumbs rats will scavenge later. A small clay cup of beer is set in your hand. Weak, murky, fermented barley, diluted with water. You lift it, feeling the cool liquid soothe your throat. You wipe your chin and set the cup aside. Eyes on the pale sunlight. Hunger recedes, replaced by warmth in your belly. You glance at companions' faces smeared with ash and sweat hands calloused from yesterday's work. They nod as you move away. Any delay could cost tomorrow's ration. Without that meal, you might collapse under the sun before noon. Cradling your bowl, you head towards the clay pit where raw bricks await formation. Each step feels effortful. Porridge gives body initial energy, but the path is long. You recall temple scribes calling bread and beer divine gifts. Here they are pragmatic fuel against exhaustion. Entering the pit, you kneel on heated earth and press cool clay between your fingers. You scoop a portion into a wooden mold and pack it down, pressing firmly to shape a brick. The weight of each filled mold feels significant, yet satisfaction warms you. You flip the mold, revealing a fresh block. Your heartbeat sinks with each movement, scoop, press, flip. You craft brick after brick, knowing each owes existence to that breakfast of barley and water. Without those bites, your arms would falter before lunch. Molding the 7th brick, you hear a merchant's words. Grain sustains the body. Today, that sustenance is literal necessary for survival under the blazing sun. With 10 bricks molded, you lift one onto a wooden sled. The 2nd and 3rd follow. You push the sled toward the drying yard. Barley's impact is immediate. Your bones feel sturdier beneath your linen tunic, and your steps hold determination. At the yard, you stack bricks in rows. Already sun-warmed air draws moisture, turning clay into brittle forms. You run a hand over one brick's edge, hissing slightly, at heat biting through your calloused palm. Still, you stand tall. Breakfast has fueled this moment. Nearby, a man slurps his bowl before tossing it to a child who runs off to clean utensils. Time is precious. Each return means another spoonful of grain. You finish your bowl and hand it to the cleaning child, noting the line of hungry faces awaiting their turn. An overseer's shout echoes. You straighten and lift more bricks. Each step tests resolve. Sand clings to sandals, mud sticks to fabric, and dehydration tugs at your focus. You clutch your water skin and take a measured sip. Days of minimal rations taught you to value each drop. You sip slowly, letting liquid quell thirst. The barley porridge in your belly soaks water, turning to damp grain as it settles. By mid-morning, you return to a shaded corner by the well. Bowls of fresh porridge await those who finish early. You step forward gratefully and receive a small portion. This second breakfast does more than suppress hunger. It restores a faltering spirit. You press a spoon to your lips. The bitter taste, now familiar, comforts more than repulses. You dip a chunk of bread into the porridge and feel connected to ancient banquets. Though temple feasts boasted fruits and meats, this simple bowl reminds you survival demands simpler fare. Resting on your haunches, you let barley settle. Men fan themselves with palm fronds. Some chat, others stare at the ground. You recall a scribe's lesson on moderation. In this moment, though, discomfort churns, survival takes precedence. You finish your porridge, handing the bowl away. A laborer who cleans utensils nods in thanks. Tiny ants trail toward crumbs on dirt. A single grain ignites a feeding frenzy ants, and humans bound by hunger's law. Afternoon will demand more effort. Canals need clearing, reeds must be bundled, tomb walls await mortar. Yet breakfast buoyed you. Without it, energy would wane and muscles cramp under summer heat. After scattering a few barley grains for birds, you rise. Mind shifts to tasks ahead, reshaping reeds, guiding water-loading jars onto donkeys. Each demands fuel from this morning's meager feast. As the sun climbs, heat intensifies under thin tunic. But lingering fullness steadies your steps. You inhale deeply, tasting barley's earthy aroma. It is a humble reminder that in ancient Egypt, survival began with bread and porridge sustenance, as mundane as it was essential. You step forward, carrying bricks and confidence born from breakfast's simple power. In this land of heat, a bowl of barley porridge symbolizes hope and solidarity. The spoonful weaves you into a tapestry of fellow laborers, those who share scarcity and strength. Breakfast is more than a meal. It is a bond that sustains bodies and spirits against unrelenting heat. As you march on to the next task, that grain remains a whisper of resilience in your bones. Replenished by the coarse barley porridge consumed before dawn, you leave the trough and step into the glaring heat. Sweat beads at your temples as you move toward the flax fields. The overseer's crack of a wooden staff signals your squad to begin. You grip a simple bronze sickle, its curved blade still cool. Each swing severs flax stalks. You gather bundles, lowering them into a basket. The motions flow smoothly, now eased by the barley that anchors your energy. By mid-morning, your basket bulges. A donkey cart awaits, held by a boy. You and others bind stalks with twine, twisting until bundles feel tight. Too heavy, and the donkey resists. Too light, and the weaver complains. You lift the final bundle and stack it. The donkey shifts beneath the weight, offering a heated breath. Next, you walk to a simple threshing area. Donkeys circle, dragging rollers that separate fibers from husks. You shovel stalks forward. Dust rises in plumes, coating nostrils. Each breath carries grit that scratches your throat, but barley's warmth sustains you. You lean on the shovel as piles of stripped flax accumulate. Midday arrives with a searing glare. You cross a narrow canal to reach running water. Kneeling on sun-warmed stones, you scoop murky Nile water and tip it to your lips. You splash water onto your cheeks and soak your tunic's edges, relishing momentary relief. The temple construction site stands ahead. Stone masons carve sandstone blocks engraved with sacred symbols. You join a team hauling blocks across rough planks set over loose sand. Each block is heavier than your torso. With 4 others, you hoist it onto a wooden sled. Friction snarls and you nudge it forward. Midway, the sled sticks. A worker pours water on the planks. Instantly, the sled creeps. You guide it until it reaches the scaffold. Masons lift it into place, and sacred symbols gleam in sunlight. You head to midday rations at a low trough. Laborers receive another small portion of barley and a cup of diluted beer. You grasp a clay bowl as someone ladles in thick grains. You sip the murky liquid. You tuck a few grains into your tunic's pocket. Renewed, you join bricklayers filling gaps in the temple's outer wall. A mound of lime powder sits near a trough. You scoop powder into a bowl and pour water. Stirring gritty mortar forms. You test consistency with cautious fingers until it holds shape. Carrying mortar, you step to stacked mud bricks. Bricklayers place a block, and you press mortar into the gap before smoothing edges. The weight pulls against gravity, but your hands hold steady. Under your touch, bricks adhere, and the structure rises against the desert sky. Heat radiates, but you focus on each placement. You wipe sweat from your brow, smearing clay for protection. Each placement brings satisfaction. With breakfast fueling you, your arms resist trembling. By late afternoon, a cluster of reeds near the canal beckons. You retreat to wash mortar from hands and stretch aching limbs. You kneel by water, dipping fingers into cool mud and rubbing it across ankles. You stand and feel tension ease. Your final task, collecting clay for tomorrow's mortar. A low embankment beside the canal holds damp earth. You sink hands into cool clay, scooping lumps into a wicker basket. It grows heavy with each scoop. You lift, lamenting the weight, but barley's energy pulses through limbs. At dusk, the sun's heat softens. Your tunic clings to salt-stained skin. You pause near a reed hut, gazing at temple walls glowing gold. For a moment, exhaustion fades, replaced by awe. You trace symbols from memory offerings to gods. Turning to leave, you head to your quarters, a row of mud brick rooms. Your sandals thud on packed earth. Inside, you peel off the damp tunic and inspect skin for cuts. You untie linens from feet. Blisters linger where sand scalded your soles. You wash limbs in a basin, watching water turn cloudy. Relief seeps into muscles. You press palms to your chest, feeling barley's warmth settle. A low table holds your evening meal, a piece of salted fish, 2 flatbreads, and a handful of dry barley grains. You eat methodically, each bite measured. The bitter fish and crumbly bread feel precious. You dip bread into a thin barley paste, recalling how each grain carried you through today. As dusk deepens, you know tomorrow brings more work. Hauling stones, mixing mortar harvesting sacks anew. Lying on a straw mat that barely cushions your back, you cradle a shallow bowl of water. In dim lamplight, shadows dance across mud brick walls. You whisper a final prayer to Sekhmet for healing and to Khnum for strength. Barley fueled your morning. Barley sustained each midday task. Tonight, its last grains promise hope for sunrise. You close your eyes, certain that at dawn, you will rise once again to face the sun's relentless fury, anchored by barley's humble power. As night descends, the courtyard grows quiet except for a distant flute's melody drifting across temples. The notes remind you of life beyond labor children's voices echo, and priests intone prayers to hidden gods. You inhale the cool air, letting rhythms soothe your wings of weariness. You join fellow laborers by a small fire where they share dried figs and barley porridge heated over embers. One offers you a fig. Its sweetness bursts against the previous meal's bitterness. You swallow slowly, savoring the taste truly and deeply, as hours of toil fade into memory. Inside your hut, the pale moonlight filters through narrow openings. You retrieve a small Anubis amulet tucked in your meager belongings. The carved jackal-headed figure glints in faint light. Placing it over your heart, you whisper a plea for protection. Lying on your straw mat, you feel barley's warmth settle in your core. The day's heat, sand, and sweat fade. Tomorrow you will rise before dawn. In ancient Egypt, every sunrise is earned by labor, and every grain of barley carries hope for the next day. Sweat drips down your temples as you lift mortar and set each brick in place, yet the overseer's gaze never wavers. His sharp eyes flick from one laborer to the next, ensuring not a moment of hesitation. You recall the hierarchy that binds you, Pharaoh, above all priests interpreting divine will, overseers enforcing their decrees, and you, a humble laborer caught in the middle. As you bend to level each row of bricks, fear coils in your stomach. To complain would be to attract his ire, and worse, to draw accusations of blasphemy. You remember yesterday's conversation with a coworker who dared whisper about blistered hands. He muttered, "My fingers feel like roasted meat," and the overseer within earshot snapped, "You insult Ra's gift of fire silence." The man fell quiet, eyes downcast, chest heaving with forced breaths. Now his hands red and swollen. Move bricks with mechanical precision. He will not speak again. You scrape mortar from your palms, tasting grit as sweat drips into your mouth. The sky above is cloudless, a vast blue mirror reflecting Ra's dominance. A goat skull mounted near the temple entrance reminds you that complaining can be lethal, as those who shirked duty often found themselves sacrificed in the name of appeasing gods. The weight of every stone seems heavier when freedoms of speech are stolen. Each laborer tells himself a silent prayer, hoping the gods soften their heat. You clasp an amulet before sliding it under your tunic, a small statue of Thoth, god of wisdom, who may guide you through toil. Your companion whispers. Thoth hears every plea, and you nod. Voice lost under the sun's roar. Prayers are your only outlet. Words of displeasure would echo against mud brick walls and return as curses. Midday arrives with merciless intensity. Your tunic, damp from sweat, and Nile water clings to sunburned skin. You bend to fetch more mortar hands, trembling not from weight, but from dread. A shout rings out. Another man, known for his constant thirst, dared to murmur for water before receiving permission. Now he stands bound ears reddened as he humbles himself to Ra in public humiliation. The overseer commands him to drink only after reciting a sacred hymn. The man kneels in dust voice cracking as he invokes the sun god's mercy, then finally sips the murky liquid. Silence descends, but your heart pounds. You swallow hard and continue mixing lime and sand, each grain a reminder of oppressive dogma. Around you, scalding air distorts the horizon, and you imagine Ra's eye watching from above. The smallest misstep could trigger accusations of blasphemy. In your mind, you replay whispered tales of families torn apart because someone cursed the heat, believing it a sign of angered gods. Your stomach growls, but expressing hunger equals complaining. You cradle a clay jar against your hip, filled with murky Nile water, meant to quench your thirst when the overseer permits. Instead of drinking, you pour a few droplets onto dusty ground, an offering to Sekhmet, goddess of healing, hoping for mercy. A bead of water slides down your throat, refreshing yet bitter with fear. You sigh inwardly, nourishing hope with each gulp of dread. The sun inches westward. Still, bricks rise. You remember how Ra was revered as life's giver. Without his light, crops would perish, and the Nile's floods would fail to nourish fields. Yet today, his blessing sears skin. The paradox sits heavy gods who nurture also inflict torment. Ancient murals show Ra's falcon head crowned with a solar disk, eyes blazing. You imagine that same blaze upon your back as you lift heavy stone. Afternoon haze stretches shadows against temple walls. You pause briefly to wipe sweat from your brow fingers, dragging across gritty cheeks. A fellow laborer catches your eye and gives a half nod. No words pass. Shared suffering is communicated through weary glances. Together, you erect walls, step by step, echoing prayers in your head, but voicing none. You hope that by shouldering burdens in silence, you honor Ra's will. As the sun dips, the overseer finally signals rest. You drop mortar-laden hands and exhale tension, uncoiling with the sun's departure. Yet even in reprieve, fear lingers. You dare not verbalize relief, for praising ease might suggest you doubted Ra's power. Instead, you press both palms to your chest, offering gratitude in silence. You trudge toward a shallow pool where water accumulates from Nile-fed irrigation. Thirst seizes you. You lower your face to sip slowly, savoring droplets like rare jewels. You remember the temple's priests reciting chants that water symbolizes purification. Now you purify only grime and exhaustion from your skin-cleansing sins of fatigue in nameless praises. Under fading light, you strip to rest. Your tunic, heavy with sweat and dust, is quickly replaced by a simple linen shift borrowed from a neighbor. Night air offers cooling solace, but also invites insects that bite exposed flesh. You remember how some scratched open wounds to draw out pus disease, more feared than overseer's whip. Yet you cannot complain if insects bite. That too would be disrespect to earth and sky. You lie on the mud brick floor, propping your head on woven reeds. Stars appear countless points, piercing darkness. Some say they represent ancestors guiding the living. You recall prayers to Osiris, ruler of the afterlife. A shiver runs through you, wondering if complaining here would echo in the halls of Duat. The concept of speech as offering holds weight. Words are songs to gods, or chains to chafe against. You dream of cool breezes and voices you cannot utter. Dawn will bring more labor, more bricks, more silence. Tomorrow, when blistered hands ache anew, you will whisper prayers instead of protest. The air may burn, but your spirit, guided by unspoken devotion, endures. In ancient Egypt, silence against suffering is the truest tribute, a muted hymn beneath Ra's unwavering gaze. In that hush, you discover strength within silence, forging resilience as indelible as carved hieroglyphs, unspoken, yet eternally present in your every stride truly. Night settles as you make your way to the communal courtyard. Muscles ache from hauling stones, hunger gnaws deeply. By torchlight, laborers gather around a low wooden table where a clay bowl holds the evening meal. You grab a chunk of dense barley bread. Coarse crumbs scratch your teeth as you rip off a piece. A fellow worker dips his bread into thin lentil broth, its flavor salty but faint. You follow raisin-soaked bread to your lips. Each bite offers warmth but little substance. Slivers of onion float in the broth, but no meat remains. You swallow quickly, knowing any extra taste might rile your empty stomach. After finishing your portion, you lift a clay cup of watered beer, tipping it back. The liquid's murky bitterness slides down your throat, dulling hunger for a moment. The bowl circulates among others before a child claims and carries it to the well for washing. You rub your stomach, grateful for even this meager meal. Outside, you dip hands into a basin of boiled Nile water, washing sweat and dust from your face. Blisters on your heels ache from walking on scorching sand. You wrap a linen shift around your shoulders. Night chill is sharper than day's heat. You crawl onto a straw mat, pressing back against rough reeds. Sleep beckons, but hunger lingers, tugging at your thoughts. You remove a small pouch of cracked barley from midday meals. You pop a few grains into your mouth, savoring their earthy sweetness. Each crunch reminds you of grain's power to sustain hard labor. You tuck the pouch away, hoping tomorrow's dawn brings enough porridge to fuel you again. Dawn's pale light seeps through cracks in mud brick walls. You rise and journey to the cooking hearth. A pot of barley porridge bubbles over embers. Holding a wooden bowl, you watch as thick grains drop inside. Steam curls upward, and the porridge's warm aroma brightens your spirit. You scoop a spoonful onto your tongue, its coarse texture a whisper of hope. Tearing a piece of stale bread, you dunk it into the porridge, letting it soak. Each bite eases hunger's ache. A cup of diluted beer is pressed into your hand. You sip slowly, letting the cool liquid chase off emptiness. Laborers nearby nod as they finish, mindful any pause can cost tomorrow's ration. You fill a water skin from a basin, knowing its murky hue means risk. Boiled over embers, it still carries hints of mud. You sip carefully, preserving the precious fluid. Thirst remains, but you trust this water to carry you until mid-morning. A distant shout sends you toward the field with a woven basket. Today's task, gathering heavy river stones to reinforce canal walls. Each step on sun-baked ground feels like pressing against coals. You glance for any scrap of shade, a narrow shadow cast by a lone reed. But heat radiates from every angle. At the canal, men stand waist-deep in tepid water. You wade in, letting moisture cool your skin. You fill your basket, balancing stones on your shoulder. The load grates against your sweat-damp tunic, each rock pressing into your flesh. You step onto a plank to deliver stones, occasionally slipping on sand-coated boards, slick with water. By mid-morning, sweat saturates your tunic. Hunger returns with fresh vigor. You struggle to remember fresh fruit. Instead, your mind focuses on the hollow ache in your stomach. You drain a last sip from your water skin, hoping it suffices until lunch. A whistle signals lunchtime. Laborers gather at low tables. A thin stew of lentils and onion awaits. You tear bread into the bowl, stirring soggy fragments. Each spoonful tastes of earth and fatigue. You swallow before hunger flares beyond control. A clay cup of beer is pressed into your palm. The liquid's bitterness is a fleeting balm. Returning to work, you stoop to gather long reeds for thatched roofs. Bundles press against your shoulders, ends biting your skin. Hunger's voice whispers that these reeds do not feed you. You ignore it and tie bundles with palm twine, each knot a reminder of fetters binding laborers to decaying grain. Sun hangs high as you carry reed bundles to carts. Even the donkey's flanks shimmer with heat. You place your load and feel a sharp twinge of dizziness. A momentary blur brings sweat to your face before you steady against a mud brick wall. Your final chore involves filling clay jars for temple offerings. You dip a jar into the canal, letting murky water slosh inside. You hesitate. Drinking from this jar invites illness. Yet devotion and dread intertwine. You carry water to cleanse a statue, hoping the ritual pleases gods. Walking to the temple shrine, you pour water over a carved figure and step back. You cup a handful and drink. The water's mud-laced flavor grits against your teeth. Still, you swallow, letting each gulp chase faint hope through veins. Returning to quarters, you feel ribs under your tunic. The evening meal awaits, a thin barley stew with scant onion. You tear bread into the bowl, stirring until soaked. The stew's warmth eases aches, but not hunger. You swallow quickly, avoiding stares from fellow laborers eyeing your bowl with equal desperation. You lift a final cup of beer and drink, letting its cold sting chase residual hunger pangs. Silence blankets the courtyard. Complaints are forbidden. Speaking of hunger equals disrespect to Ra. You press lips together, letting approval pass through quiet acceptance. Night closes in. You lie on your mat, each breath tasting of dust. Hunger's ache pervades, but exhaustion brings momentary sleep. You press a hand to your heart, whispering a plea to Isis. Grant more grain, soften the Nile's flood, ease your suffering. At dawn, you will rise to the same routine. Barley porridge, stony fields, thin stew, restless sleep. In ancient Egypt, grain means survival. Each day, your diet thins your strength, but hope remains in whispered prayers and the memory of barley's simple taste. Until relief arrives, each spoonful sustains bones and spirit against unending hunger. Dawn breaks and your body aches before the sun arrives. A dull throb in your gut reminds you that yesterday's scant meals failed to fortify you. You rise slowly against the mud brick wall, feeling the cool morning air mixed with a foul scent, signs of sickness. Outside, laborers trek toward the fields, faces drawn, eyes haunted by weariness. You make your way to the Nile's edge, seeking water to wash cramps. Each step on sand feels like glowing embers underfoot. At the riverbank, its surface glimmers, but beauty masks danger. You dip a clay jug into murky water, scooping a cupful of silt. You bring it to your mouth, tasting earth and decay. Each swallow promises both refreshment and risk parasites, invisible but lethal. You splash water across your face and chest, hoping to remove dust. Yet insects cluster, mosquitoes buzzing, black flies landing on exposed skin. You swat one and feel a small sting, maybe malaria delivered. You press on toward fields, dread tightening your chest. Your legs quake from weakness as you bend to harvest barley. Hands fumble against dried stalks. A sharp cramp seizes you. You clutch your belly teeth, cutting a cry. Hot bile rises in your throat. The overseer strides by, whip in hand. You straighten, forcing more stalks even as nausea burns. You stagger toward reeds by an irrigation channel. You squat, releasing a torrent that chills and burns. Diarrhea shakes you. Each spasm tests strength. You taste bile and crimson residue, bruised tissue from strain. You grit your teeth, breathing shallowly, hoping no one sees. After cramps ease, you slip into canal water for relief. It laps at your calves and soothes burning skin. But water invites infection. You recall stories of children dying from parasites lodged inside. You cup water and rinse your face, watching insects gather. Each ripple could conceal a threat. Leaving the canal dizzy and weak, you lean against a sun-baked wall. Your skin feels hot breath coming in ragged gasps. A foreman approaches, glancing at your pale cheeks and soiled tunic. He grips your arm. "Move," he barks. You nod and force obedience, though each movement jars pain through your body. The sun's glare intensifies as you head to a shaded area for lunch. Barley bread and thin lentil stew. You shovel bites into your mouth, but each morsel tumbles like gravel. You swallow chipped bread and drink watered beer, hoping to quell illness. Instead, hunger returns, and stew's warm broth churns in your gut. Nearby, a child from your quarter lies shivering by a palm tree. His eyes flicker with delirium. A priest drapes a linen cloth over his forehead, chanting for his life, but the boy's breathing rasps with each inhale. His mother watches tears glistening as she holds his hand. In that moment, you understand young lives are fragile offerings, and the river's curse spares no one, including the innocent. You swallow that image, pressing it against your ribs, as if to anchor hope. You press your hand to your mouth, fighting a fresh wave of nausea, and resolve to find safer water or perish alongside him. A fellow laborer coughs beside you, hacking deep. His face is ashen eyes sunken. He jabs at his throat, releasing blood mixed with phlegm. You recoil, heart pounded by fear. He staggers away, clutching a jug. You watch particles swirl in his water jar, imagining worms within. You rise and move to gather clay for mortar. Each handful feels like molten rubber. Inside, your stomach twists and you double over again. A swarm of flies descends on your skin. Mosquitoes hum in your ear and you swat wildly. A sickly odor follows sweat mixed with illness. Others step around you, avoiding close contact. Your vision blurs as sweat pours. You stumble toward the granary to drop clay. Your hands tremble, lifting bricks onto carts. Heat ripples from every surface, pressing down. You gag at the scent of grain, suspecting rats scurry within sacks, leaving droppings and fleas. You steady at a basin filled with Nile water, rinsing clay from your palms. The water chills, and you gasp, bones rattling with shivers. Fever peaks sweat, turning icy on skin. You shiver in sun, knowing chills signal serious illness. Lastly, you must deliver harvested grains to a storage hut. You crane under the crate's weight each step, sending jolts through your back. Pain radiates from your spine. You whisper a plea to Goddess Sekhmet for healing. Legs feel like lead, but fear drives you onward. At the storage hut, you loosen the crate onto the ground. Each grain rattles like bones in a sack. Rats emerge, teeth gnawing husks. You cough a dry choke that tastes copper. Blood trickles from your lips. A guard flinches silent. You dip a rag into beer and dab at your nose. Stumbling away, you return to your quarter. Children cling to mother's skirts, watching you pass. You see a pale boy near the well, stepping toward it unsteadily. You follow, offering your jug. He drinks greedily. His mother watches, praying for his survival. You wonder if he will see dusk. At dusk, you reach a small medical hut. An apprentice healer scrapes a poultice of herbs and linen. She applies it to your forehead and chest, voicing prayers to Osiris. The paste feels cool. You cling to sensation, picturing sickness lifting from your chest. You taste bitter herbs and imagine them fighting unseen invaders. Night descends and you lie on a straw mat. Your body thrums with fever. You clutch a wooden token of Imhotep, pressing it to your heart. You whisper prayers, recalling childhood lullabies, and your mother's gentle touch. You hope dawn finds you alive, free of cramps and sores. Morning comes again, and you will rise if breath still fills your lungs. Yet many will not. In ancient Egypt, disease lurks in every drop of water, buzzing insect and handful of grain. To survive is an act of will and luck. Anything less invites death under relentless sun. Dawn breaks and your body aches. Remnants of yesterday's fever reminding you that even simple tasks demand strength you lack. Hunger claws at your gut, and you recall the healer's warning. Protein will save you, yet protein belongs to the privileged. Determined you rise and dress in your linen shift. Feeling it cling to sunburned skin as your muscles tremble, you join laborers at the communal hearth. Steam rises from a pot of barley porridge, its aroma bitter yet familiar. You accept your bowl coarse grains boiled in water, a handful of lentils floating on top. No meat, no vegetables. You scoop a spoonful grit, scraping your tongue. Each bite reminds you that your body lacks vital nourishment. After finishing, you break flatbread hard-crusted and crumbly. Dipping it into porridge, you let grains cling. Your eyes drift to a priest's assistant carrying roasted ducks for temple rituals. Its aroma wafts across the courtyard. You swallow hard, imagining tender meat breaking in your mouth for energy. Your reality returns grain, and watery beer sustain you, offering minimal fuel for endless labor. Walking to the granary, you carry empty sacks across sun-baked ground. Your task: deliver flour. At the granary, you heft a sack as a clerk fills it with coarse flour. The weight presses on your shoulders, reminding you of how scant nutrition weakens bone and sinew. You hoist it onto a cartwheels, squealing under the sun's glare. Mid-morning, you pause under a crate's shadow to sip water from your water skin. Its murky liquid offers minimal relief. You drink sparingly, knowing thirst returns before dusk. A skiff appears on the Nile, carrying fish. Laborers gather, but you cannot afford even a small portion. With flour delivered, you join a team moving limestone blocks. Each block weighs more than your frail frame. You lift together, sweat dripping down your back as muscles protest. Hunger gnaws and your vision blurs. A hulking overseer stands beside you, whip coiled at his waist. Complaints are forbidden. One word of protest invites the lash. By midday, you queue for lunch, barley stew, and stale bread. The thin broth yields only a few meager lentils per bowl. You stir stew with bread, gathering protein-rich particles. Each spoonful tastes like dust and fatigue. You swallow quickly, letting warmth soothe aches. Nearby, a coworker collapses. He groans, clutching his chest. A healer's apprentice arrives too late, murmuring about parasites and malnutrition. No herbs mend a starving body, and the man's breath rattles fading as heat bears down. In the heat, you join threshers separating grain from chaff. Dust swirls, sun bears down. Grain slips through your fingers. You recall childhood feasts, roasted ducks, fresh figs. Now you press withered grain against cracked hands. Faster, an overseer shouts. You grab a handful of grain and swallow raw husks, gagging as you force down meager sustenance that dries your throat and promises little strength. Afternoon brings more toil. You carry salted fish to temple workers. Each jar feels as heavy as stone on your shoulder. You trudge across the courtyard, balancing jars. Heat radiates, hunger intensifies. A statue of Renanutet stands nearby. You drop a handful of grain at her feet, grain you might have eaten. Poverty forces you to beg mercy from gods indifferent to your need. Delivering jars, you spot a temple servant enjoying grilled fish and onions. Its aroma fills your nose. You step away, stomach growling, aware you cannot share even scraps. You wonder how long you can endure on bread, beer, and scant lentils before malnutrition overtakes you. Returning to your post, you unload jars and collapse onto a reed mat in the shade. You press palms to your belly, picturing protein's healing muscles. Instead, you have nothing but barley and water. You lift a small pouch of barley you stowed from breakfast and pop kernels. Each one bursts in your mouth, gritty and dry, sustaining you barely. You launch daylight tasks with aching joints and trembling hands. Your hair feels limp, and you notice ankles swollen from fluid retention, a sign of lacking protein. Concentration drifts as mental fog thickens. You miscount grains while measuring portions, aware that cognitive impairment marks malnutrition. Younger laborers suffer similar fates, sunken eyes and listless movements. Each empty stomach echoes the same refrain, without meat, vegetables, or dairy body and mind. Weaken beneath the relentless Egypt's demands daily. Before dusk, overseers order thatched roofs repaired. You gather reeds and carry bundles to a cart. Hunger gnaws so fiercely your spine curves forward. You tie bands of linen around blistered feet and limp toward the worksite. As light fades, hunger exhausts your focus. You sway, vision darkening. You lean on a wall and breathe shallowly. A coworker offers a cup of water, a rare kindness, but warns you to drink sparingly. You sip and feel relief, but no water cannot replace absent calories. Night falls and you go to the hearth again. Dinner, a small bowl of lentil soup with a handful of onions. Lentils offer protein, but only enough for a bird. You scoop a spoonful and swallow, letting warmth settle. You avoid speaking of emptiness. Voicing need disrespects raw. You finish the bowl and break flatbread, dipping fragments into broth. A stable boy tosses fish bones to a dog. The dog snaps them up, savoring marrow. You envy its scraps. You kneel by your mat and rub salt into your lips, hoping sodium pockets sustain your body longer. Tomorrow promises no richer fare. You fold your hands and offer a silent prayer to Thoth, hoping wisdom brings change. Lying on your straw mat, hunger throbs through your veins. You draw your shift around yourself, recalling festivals where meat and wine flowed under lantern light. Now, only deprivation lingers, and your dreams fill with green fields and bountiful harvests. Your last thought before sleep, a half-empty grain pouch tucked beneath your arm. Each kernel represents hope and desperation. You close your eyes, steeling yourself to rise again before dawn, armed with grain and prayer. You wake at dawn, feeling weak fever's heat pulsing through your body. Yesterday's thin meals left you vulnerable, and now each breath feels hot. You clamber from your reed mat and stumble toward the healer's hut. In the courtyard, several laborers slump against walls, skin damp with sweat, faces pale. You grip a small amulet of Imhotep, seeking divine aid. The healer's hut stands simply reeds and mud-faint smoke drifting from a charcoal brazier. Inside sits the healer, an older man with failure-scarred hands and solemn eyes. He rises as you kneel before him, describing fever's grip weakness in muscles coughing dryly until throat crack, skin burning despite early hour. He guides you to a low bench near a shelf stacked with clay jars of powdered herbs. He selects crushed willow bark, ground garlic, and dried mint, combining them with honey in a clay bowl. Each ingredient is said to draw heat from the body. He murmurs a prayer to Sekhmet, goddess of healing, as he stirs. The ointment's scent is acrid bitterness of garlic mingles with honey's faint sweetness, yet hope lingers. He presses the paste against your temples and throat, massaging gently. The cool balm soothes burning flesh and eases pounding temples. Next, he fills a clay bowl with steamy broth, bits of pounded fish, coarse grain, and a sprinkling of dried onion. You grasp the bowl with trembling hands. Each spoonful feels urgent warmth racing through your chest. The healer watches intently, nodding whenever you swallow. He then presses a heated iron rod to your back, branding a small cross-shaped symbol. Pain flares briefly as sizzle sears flesh, but he whispers, "This marks you under Ra's protection." He retrieves a clay amulet engraved with Thoth's ibis head. He places it over your heart and chants incantations from a small papyrus scroll. Hieroglyphic phrases fill the air with ancient authority. Thoth, grant wisdom. Heal this vessel of clay. Restore breath to his lungs. Each word resonates in your chest. You settle onto a reed mat, eyes closed. Feeling heat and fear ebbing. When you awaken, dusk colors the sky pink. The healer returns with a cup of warm water infused with crushed lotus petals. He tells you to rinse your mouth and drink slowly. Each sip soothes the burn in your throat. He then ties a strip of papyrus around your wrist, chanting protective words. The loop of papyrus feels crisp yet comforting against skin. He grants you a small barley cake sweetened with dates. You break off a piece. Its crumbly sweetness offers solace. You chew slowly, feeling energy return. He presses a piece of linen bandage soaked in cooled boiled water to your forehead. Rest under Sekhmet's gaze through the night, he says gently. You lie back, drifting toward broken sleep. Dawn finds you regaining strength. You rise bathed in pale light bones, lighter than yesterday. The healer stands at the door, offering a clay cup of boiled water. Its vapors curl upward, hinting at purity. You drink, feeling cool relief travel down your throat. He nudges a small platter of barley cakes until crumbs cling to your fingers. Each crumb dissolves, feeding you as sunlight spreads. You tuck a tiny pouch of crushed coriander and cinnamon into your shift. The healer advised mixing it with broth later to aid digestion. Stepping outside, you head to the well. You fill a clay jug with boiled water and watch ripples shimmer under morning light. Laborers pause in greeting. Their nods reflect relief at your return. You navigate toward the fields with careful steps, mindful not to strain fragile limbs. At the worksite, overseers command you to mix mortar for temple walls. You produce one barley cake and crumble pieces into the steamy broth at midday. You inhale fragrant swirl of coriander and cinnamon spices the healer insisted upon. You stir and sip, noting how each flavor soothes hunger and eases digestion. Afternoon sun blazes without mercy as you lift baskets of clay. Each load still weighs heavily on your recently weakened frame, but you press forward. A fellow laborer slides you a small leather pouch of crushed ginger. For your stomach, he says. You trust his gesture and chew a bit. Warmth radiates from your belly, chasing nausea. Time ticks on each breath, now steadier, each step surer. You glance at temple stones rising under skilled masons' chisels. Their rhythmic strikes remind you that despite illness, you remain part of this grand endeavor. Stone by stone, life and death intersect. Evening arrives and you join others in the courtyard. A pot simmers with lentils, barley, and dried onions. You break bread into simmering stew, tasting modest depths. Hunger lingers, but is muted by nourishment's return. You sip thin beer, letting its cool sting remind you of yesterday's fever. At dusk, you wander toward the riverbank. The Nile's waters flow dark and constant. You cup boiled water and rinse dusty hands and face. You lift a clay cup of cooled broth and drink by river's edge, savoring freedom from illness. Darkness falls and stars emerge over dunes. You return to your reed mat, clutching the amulet of Thoth and small remaining barley cakes. You whisper thanks to Sekhmet and Imhotep. Saving grace lies in trust and healing ritual herbs and prayers woven together to chase away fever's grasp. At first light 2 days later, you awaken with a calm certainty that the worst has passed. You step to the pottery hearth, where the healer stands waiting with a fresh barley mixture, spiced with coriander and fennel. Each sip restores vigor. Grateful, you wrap your shift and proceed to the temple site. Moss-green birds flit between columns as you shape mortar between giant sandstone blocks. You feel steady muscles, no longer trembling with fever's memory. When the overseer nods, you lift baskets of clay. Hope fills your heart under Ra's ever-watching eye. Tomorrow promises renewal. Thank gods. You awaken before sunrise, feeling strength return after illness's grip. Today, offerings to gods precede labor. You slip into a linen shift and step into pre-dawn's chill. Incense from the temple drifts through air, promising ceremony. Outside, villagers gather baskets of bread jugs of beer and jars of oil. You lift a clay urn of olive oil, its golden liquid reflecting dawn's glow. Your wife hands you 3 small loaves made from barley flour. Part of each loaf belongs to gods Ra, Isis, and Osiris. Skipping offerings risks their anger, famine, or plague could follow. At the temple gate, priests in white linen greet you. You bow, setting down jars of oil before Isis's statue. A priest raises an ankh-tipped staff and chants voices echoing against sandstone walls. The flame of a brazier flickers, and amber incense smoke curls upward. You feel an echo of peace, knowing these gifts nourish divine hearts. Next, you move to a granite slab where loaves rest. The priest sprinkles salt and crushed herbs, thyme, coriander across them, murmuring blessings. You arrange your loaves beside others, each measured offering weaving community prayers. The scent of baking barley lingers in your nostrils, reminding you how fields yield life when gods are honored. A second ceremony begins as you light frankincense resin in a small brazier. Sticky resin crackles, sending fragrant smoke skyward. You clasp hands against your chest, focusing on rhythmic chant. Inhale deeply, this fragrance bridges mortal toil with divine presence. You recall your father performing this duty standing tall, despite dusty robes. Now you stand in his place. Ceremony concludes at dawn. Priests step aside, and you exit through the temple's massive gates. Dust settles as you walk toward fields. Morning's ritual remains guiding your steps. Without offerings, work feels empty. Without work, offerings lack meaning. Balance sustains cosmos. In fields, earth awaits beneath pale sun. Who in hand you till soil, enriched by Nile's silt. Sweat beads on your brow, but incense's memory steadies heart. Each swing of hoe cuts earth's crust, echoing morning's ritual bread. And oil were broken to ensure this very harvest. Mid-morning sun peaks as you pause at a trough to fill a clay jug with water. You sip slowly, letting cool liquid chase fatigue. Nearby colleagues draw water too, murmuring that Osiris heard prayers and blessed streams. You believe it watching ripples form golden lines where light strikes liquid surface. Lunchtime arrives under a date palm's shade. Your midday meal, barley porridge, and a small flatbread. You tear bread dip into porridge and swallow handfuls. Each bite carries memory of dawn's loaves. You sip watered beer from a clay cup, tasting faint barley bitterness. Hunger eases, and you let barley's warmth fill you. After rest, overseer signals canal repairs. You lift bundles of reeds and walk across narrow planks. Water flows beneath like liquid blessing. You bend to press mud onto eroded bank. Each scoop honors water's gift. Without these canals, fields would dry and curses might spread. You recall morning's incense smoke guiding labor. Now it permeates your mind as you shape earth to sustain crops. Afternoon haze thickens. you pause, glancing at temple spires on horizon. Offerings memory lingers, the scent of frankincense, weight of loaves, warmth of oil. Without these, farms would falter. With them, you can nurture seedlings sprouting in tilled rows. You kneel to inspect young barley shoots, each a prayer made tangible. As sun begins to wane, you gather harvest of lentils for evening's household offering. With nimble fingers, you shell pods, dropping beans into a basket. These legumes represent life's continuity, connecting morning's gifts to tomorrow's needs. Your neighbor watches, nodding in silent solidarity. Each family contributes, daily ensuring shared blessings return. Walking home, you carry lentils, jars of oil, and leftover breadcrumbs, each item destined for your household shrine. You step inside and kneel before Anubis's wooden statue. You set down jars of oil beside a small ceramic plate. You pour a little oil, gently watching it pool. You sprinkle lentils around plate and lay bread slices next to them. A wisp of incense curls from earlier, clinging to grain and oil. You whisper a prayer, "Protect us, guide our spirits." A faint glow remains as smoke drifts from altar. Your task complete, you share remaining porridge with your youngest son. He eats slowly, eyes bright. You remember your own childhood at your father's side during offerings. His gentle hands guided yours over dough and oil. Now your hands guide his. These simple meals tie generations to faith, shaping future laborers and priests alike. As evening deepens, temple torches flicker in the distance. You lie on a reed mat beneath a thatched roof. Faint hymns echo as distant priests prepare nighttime rites. Night's hush reminds you that obligations to gods continue even in darkness. You close eyes, recalling morning's flame incense and chant. Slowly sleep gathers you. Before drifting to sleep, you remember others who moved alongside you, the potter who offered clay vessels, the herder who laid down wool, the baker who sacrificed loaves. Artisans, families, travelers each played a role. This shared devotion strengthens your spirit, binding the community under God's watchful eyes. In the dim glow of your hut, you reflect each offering, and each harvest binds mortal and divine. You realize that even simple grains, when pooled, create power to avert drought, sway Ra's favor to sustain life. Tomorrow, you will rise and renew this cycle, trusting that your offerings ring out as prayers carrying hope across desert winds. Sleep embraces you. Knowing loaf and drop of oil shapes dawn's blessing. In this sacred rhythm, purpose exists beyond toil, a legacy for your children. In that knowledge, you find solace. Knowing each offering today ensures life, and faith endure tomorrow. The moon rises over distant dunes, a silent witness to every prayer and promise made, reminding you that though bodies tire, spirits remain steadfast under the watchful eyes of gods. Your legacy flows onward like the Nile's waters, continuous and unbroken, truly timeless. You awaken at dawn, reminded that social hierarchies shape every breath. In noble estates, women lounge on silken cushions beneath shaded arbors, sipping wine mixed with honey as servants braid hair. You step from your mud brick home to the communal well with other laborers, faces weary. A patrician woman glides by on a sedan chair, attendants shielding her with ostrich feather fans. You lower your gaze and draw water from the Nile, aware her jar once held fresher water than yours will. Returning home, you pass sumptuous villas guarded by sculpted lions, their doors carved with hieroglyphs praising gods and pharaohs. Inside those gates, noble women lounge on gilded couches draped in white linen dyed with rare indigo. Their laughter echoes as servants present platters of figs dates and fresh fish from the Nile. You cross the threshold of your own home, where your mother kneads coarse dough for a simple loaf. In this cramped room, breezes cannot find you, and smoky hearth fumes cling to every corner. As morning progresses, you follow your mother to tend goats, while noble daughters receive lessons in reading sacred texts. You walk across dusty fields to feed grain to animals, dodging stones forced from hands more accustomed to gold than loam. A palace servant calls out the schedule of temple duties. Priestesses instruct nobles in prophecy, while you gather hay in hopes of trading extras for thicker cloth. Despite laws granting women rights to own land and generate income, those decreed seldom apply to your station. Midday heat intensifies as you assist your mother, threshing barley husks floating like ghosts in the air. Noble women strollers gardens shaded by date palms, attendants handing them water in bronze goblets. You coated in dust and sweat, swallow a handful of coarse grain, and sip bitter beer, wishing for a morsel of the fruits they eat. When a noble child bursts from the villa to run through public fountains, servants rush to smooth her tunic. You press your back against a sun-baked wall, closing eyes against heat and envy. By early afternoon, you navigate narrow alleys toward the market to trade woven reeds for a scrap of cloth. Noble matrons pass by on foot, escorted by guards carrying intricately painted fans. They survey you from above their idle gaze, reminding you that your worth depends on sons you may bear and fields you harvest rather than decisions you make. Their inheritance secures power. Your inheritance is endurance and obedience. Later, you return with scant cloth to braid flax into thread. In wealthy homes, women hold symposiums discussing divine mandates and property rights. Their patrons include scribe families, whose daughters manage trading caravans. Meanwhile, you wind coarse fibers on a wooden spindle until fingers smart from friction. Your mother stands beside you, adjusting knots, reminding you that a weaver's skill might win you a small dowry. Even with this talent, marriage arrangements are decided by elders. Choice belongs to status, not to you. As evening draws near you, light a simple lamp fueled by rancid oil. Noble women light elaborate candelabras dripping beeswax, casting golden glow on frescoed walls. You wash in a shallow basin of Nile water, stained dark by silt. Fancy homes possess baths lined with alabaster. You settle for a bucket beneath a thatched roof, splashing river water sparingly. You braid hair into tidy plaits, imitating patterns stitched into noble gowns, but the coarse linen shift clings to your shoulders, ignoring your efforts. Dinner arrives, lentil stew with no meat, seasoned faintly with salt. Noble tables boast roasted duck and sweet wine. You tear bread into the pot, coaxing flavor from tiny onion slices. Each spoonful warms your belly, but leaves emptiness. You rinse the bowl and sip spare beer, grateful it dulls hunger. After eating, you carry water for household chores, while noble households prepare artistry of perfumes, jasmine, lotus, myrrh, to mask odors. Your nose rejects such luxury. The stench of poverty remains. Night finds you at the hearth. Daughters of patricians recline on plush cushions, embroidering silken robes that will be gifts to priestesses. In your home, you spin flax under oil lamp glow thread knots, snapping with each pull. Your sister dozes beside a pile of reeds for weaving. You whisper lullabies learned from your grandmother, stories of gods and endless fields of green tales you hope will spark greater dreams than this reality offers. Lying on a thin straw mat, you recall that noble women enjoy autonomy in marriage. They hold courts, resolve disputes, and transact land. Their opinions shape temple policies. In contrast, your marriage will be arranged at puberty, subject to elders' bargaining. Despite laws allowing divorce, poor women seldom secure arbiters. Judgment favors status. You imagine writing your own contract, stipulating who will guard linen and tend cattle. Instead, you will obey a husband chosen by fate and family. In the darkness, moonlight filters through reed thatch. You sense distant laughter from a noble banquet echoing over mud brick walls. A flute's melody weaves through night air carried from marble courts. You pray for strength to endure another day. You press a clay amulet of Isis against your chest, a silent plea for guidance. Your body tenses, recalling how noblewomen receive physician care, while commoners rely on boiled herbs for ailments. Sleep arrives fitfully as hunger and dreams compete. You dream of a future where fields you tend thrive under your choices, where daughters discuss art and philosophy instead of weaving thread in silence. Yet morning will return, and you will rise to fetch water-feed goats and spin flax, mindful that your potential is curtailed by birth. In this land of gods and kings, women of privilege shape destinies. You strive simply to shape your own life within boundaries forcefully drawn by status. Taufanios, a split. You awaken at dawn, reminded that social hierarchies shape every breath. In noble estates, women lounge on silken cushions beneath shaded arbors, sipping wine mixed with honey as servants braid hair. You step from your mud brick home to the communal well with other laborers' faces weary. A patrician woman glides by on a sedan chair, attendants shielding her with ostrich feather fans. You lower your gaze and draw water from the Nile, aware her jar once held fresher water than yours will. Returning home, you pass sumptuous villas guarded by sculpted lions, their doors carved with hieroglyphs praising gods and pharaohs. Inside those gates, noblewomen lounge on gilded couches draped in white linen dyed with rare indigo. Their laughter echoes as servants present platters of figs dates and fresh fish from the Nile. You cross the threshold of your own home, where your mother kneads coarse dough for a simple loaf. In this cramped room, breezes cannot find you, and smoky hearth fumes cling to every corner. As morning progresses, you follow your mother to tend goats, while noble daughters receive lessons in reading sacred texts. You walk across dusty fields to feed grain to animals, dodging stones forced from hands more accustomed to gold than loam. A palace servant calls out the schedule of temple duties. Priestesses instruct nobles in prophecy, while you gather hay in hopes of trading extras for thicker cloth. Despite laws granting women rights to own land and generate income, those decreed seldom apply to your station. Midday heat intensifies as you assist your mother, threshing barley husks floating like ghosts in the air. Noblewomen stroll rose gardens, shaded by date palms, attendants handing them water in bronze goblets. You, coated in dust and sweat, swallow a handful of coarse grain and sip bitter beer, wishing for a morsel of the fruits they eat. When a noble child bursts from the villa to run through public fountains, servants rush to smooth her tunic. You press your back against a sun-baked wall, closing eyes against heat and envy. By early afternoon, you navigate narrow alleys toward the market to trade woven reeds for a scrap of cloth. Noble matrons pass by on foot, escorted by guards carrying intricately painted fans. They survey you from above their idle gaze, reminding you that your worth depends on sons you may bear and fields you harvest rather than decisions you make. Their inheritance secures power. Your inheritance is endurance and obedience. Later, you return with scant cloth to braid flax into thread. In wealthy homes, women hold symposiums discussing divine mandates and property rights. Their patrons include scribe families whose daughters manage trading caravans. Meanwhile, you wind coarse fibers on a wooden spindle until fingers smart from friction. Your mother stands beside you, adjusting knots, reminding you that a weaver's skill might win you a small dowry. Even with this talent, marriage arrangements are decided by elders. Choice belongs to status, not to you. As evening draws near, you light a simple lamp fueled by rancid oil. Noblewomen light elaborate candelabras dripping beeswax, casting golden glow on frescoed walls. You wash in a shallow basin of Nile water, stained dark by silt. Fancy homes possess baths lined with alabaster. You settle for a bucket beneath a thatched roof, splashing river water sparingly. You braid hair into tidy plaits, imitating patterns stitched into noble gowns, but the coarse linen shift clings to your shoulders, ignoring your efforts. Dinner arrives, lentil stew, with no meat, seasoned faintly with salt. Noble tables boast roasted duck and sweet wine. You tear bread into the pot, coaxing flavor from tiny onion slices. Each spoonful warms your belly, but leaves emptiness. You rinse the bowl and sip spare beer, grateful it dulls hunger. After eating, you carry water for household chores, while noble households prepare artistry of perfumes, jasmine, lotus, myrrh to mask odors. Your nose rejects such luxury. The stench of poverty remains. Night finds you at the hearth. Daughters of patricians recline on plush cushions, embroidering silken robes that will be gifts to priestesses. In your home, you spin flax under oil lamp glow thread knots, snapping with each pull. Your sister dozes beside a pile of reeds for weaving. You whisper lullabies learned from your grandmother stories of gods and endless fields of green tales you hope will spark greater dreams than this reality offers. Lying on a thin straw mat, you recall that noble women enjoy autonomy in marriage. They hold courts, resolve disputes, and transact land. Their opinions shape temple policies. In contrast, your marriage will be arranged at puberty, subject to elders' bargaining. Despite laws allowing divorce, poor women seldom secure arbiters. Judgment favors status. You imagine writing your own contract, stipulating who will guard linen and tend cattle. Instead, you will obey a husband chosen by fate and family. In the darkness, moonlight filters through reed thatch. You sense distant laughter from a noble banquet, echoing over mud brick walls. A flute's melody weaves through night air, carried from marble courts. You pray for strength to endure another day. You press a clay amulet of Isis against your chest, a silent plea for guidance. Your body tenses, recalling how noble women receive physician care, while commoners rely on boiled herbs for ailments. Sleep arrives fitfully as hunger and dreams compete. You dream of a future where fields you tend thrive under your choices, where daughters discuss art and philosophy instead of weaving thread in silence. Yet morning will return, and you will rise to fetch water-feed goats and spin flax, mindful that your potential is curtailed by birth. In this land of gods and kings, women of privilege shape destinies. You strive simply to shape your own life within boundaries forcefully drawn by status. You wake before dawn, the morning air still cool as you step from your mud brick home into a narrow alley. The walls around you bear flaky patches from ancient repairs. You inhale sharply, noting the acrid scent of smoke mingled with filth. Each sunrise brings the same reminder in this land of sand, and sun cleanliness is a luxury few can afford. You approach a communal latrine, a pit dug into the courtyard floor covered by rough wooden planks. As you squat, you grip a worn wooden scraper, fashioned from a reed, the customary tool for cleansing. You move methodically, mindful of the flies swirling near the opening. You wipe and scrape, feeling the coarseness of the reed against your skin. A fellow laborer stands nearby, clutching a small cloth soaked in fermented fish guts, a scent potent enough to mask waste. This cloth will serve as your washcloth until it dries. After finishing, you dunk the cloth in a shallow basin filled with water drawn from the Nile yesterday. The water is murky and flecked with ochre sand, but you let it cascade over your hands, then rub it across your forearms. You scrape away the dried crust of sweat and dust from yesterday's labor. The water cools your skin briefly before slipping through your fingers in oily rivulets. A nearby child moves a small ceramic jug, scooping fresh water from a cracked basin in a courtyard corner. You wish you could drink that water, but your ration is already promised to cooking and bathing. You press onward toward your cooking hearth. The courtyard where bread is baked sits adjacent to stalls where animals are butchered. You cross, greeting the swarm of flies hovering near slabs of raw meat. You ignite embers beneath a clay pot and pour in murky water. As steam rises, faint swirls of sediment catch the early light. You remember the healer's words: boil all river water before drinking to kill parasites. You let the pot bubble, stirring coarse barley grits into rising steam. Snatches of conversation drift from nearby market stalls. A merchant warns against wading into the river during flood season, when currents churn with hidden debris and sickness lurks in every drop. Another argues that only he can supply fresh water containers, clay jars sealed with beeswax to slow contamination. You note the price and feel shame that such an item is beyond your means. Instead, you will rely on daily draws from the well descending on a frayed rope. At midday, you lead a handful of grain to a small shrine beside the well, a practice taught by temple priests to appease Ninth Goddess of Water, hoping for cleaner currents. You whisper a short prayer. Grant us water that sustains without sickness. You depart before waiting for any response, aware that idol worship could invite derision. Still, the gesture comforts you, as if the simple act of intention could purify the river's flow. Returning home, your family fills 2 clay jugs with water. One will serve for cooking, the other for bathing. You set the first aside and carry the second toward a leather basin set near your doorway. You place the vessel on a reed mat to catch drips that might otherwise stain the earthen floor. You tip the jug carefully and let water pour over a small wooden stool. You squat on its edge, submerging your feet and ankles. The water is tepid, no chill remains from before sunrise. You rub your feet briskly to remove sand trapped in calluses, mindful that cuts can fester in this environment. When you step out, beads of water cling to skin, already damp with sweat. Children play nearby, chasing scraps of cloth. You shoo them away, knowing they will track muddy footprints throughout your hut. You switch the basin to the inside next to your straw mat. You strip the dirty, sweat-stained linen shift over your head. Its coarse weave clings to sunburned skin. You step into the basin, bracing as warm water rises to mid-calf. You splash your torso, slicking sand and grime from skin. Each movement sends ripples across water, tinted faintly brown. You press fingers into scalp, aware that lice often nest in unwashed locks. You find a few tiny specks, pinch and remove them, but worry more lie hidden. Cleanliness here is an illusion. Dusk approaches, and you must gather dry palm fronds to light the hearth tonight. You deposit the basin outside and lean against your hut's shade. Sunlight dwindles, and you feel relief as heat subsides. Still, the alley remains dusty, and evening breezes swirl particulate through narrow corridors. Sweat beads on your skin again, reminding you of tomorrow's need for cleansing. Later in the evening, after cooking coarse barley and lentil stew, you fetch a small bowl of heated water for washing utensils. Each spoonful you rinse feels foreign. No longer is water fresh. It tastes of clay and sediment. You wash a single wooden bowl and spoon, setting them on a shelf to dry. You avoid spilling water onto the dirt floor. Moisture invites mildew and pests. You break a small piece of bread from today's meal and feed it to a neighbor's sparrow, hoping to repay earlier kindness. Night deepens, and you prepare for rest. You take one last swig of water from a small jug, feeling warmth flood your parched throat. You pinch a handful of dates extra saved from last week's harvest. and dip them into your water, letting sweetness coat your tongue. A small luxury, but you must preserve energy for tomorrow's walk to the river and communal latrine. You unroll a thin linen strip to wrap around an ankle whose scab from a day-old cut reopened. The wound stings as you cleanse it with boiled water, removing debris and ash. You dab crushed mint leaves atop raw flesh, setting a bandage soaked in vinegar. These herbs help prevent infection, but boiling water and gathering plants take precious time. As the moon rises above narrow rooftops, you reflect on the delicate balance between survival and disease in this land. Weakness from illness yesterday reminds you that vigilance is your shield. You lie on your straw-filled mat hair, damp from earlier washing. The night's symphony distant dog barks crickets, buzzing the faint drip of water seeping from a cracked jar, lulls you toward uneasy rest. Your body trembles from fever's fading memory, each breath a testament to survival. You shift to reach for the small pestle and mortar your mother gave you. You crush dried wormwood and coriander seeds, creating a coarse powder. This remedy will be mixed with barley porridge at dawn to ward off parasites before they take root in your intestines. You tuck the pouch beneath your pillow, trusting that in sleep your bones will restore strength. Just before sleep, you whisper a prayer to Sobek, god of crocodiles and Nile waters, asking him to guard you from hidden dangers. You recall the last time you ignored signs of waterborne illness. Fever consumed you. Limbs trembled, and the healer's hut felt farther than any temple. Now you vow to maintain these rituals, draw water before sunrise, boil thoroughly, offer a portion to Nith, and keep the latrine clean. These small acts, woven into your routine, form a shield against infection. The embers in the hearth cool to gray ash, and the hut's temperature drops. You shift under a thin woven blanket, feeling slight comfort where none existed before. Tomorrow's sun will scorch sandy lanes, and you will rise to repeat the process. In ancient Egypt, survival depends not only on skill with pick and hoe, but on vigilance over every vessel of water, every cloth used to cleanse, and every crumb offered to gods of the day. You close your eyes, hoping that in the haze of morning, your efforts will preserve life another day. You reach your mud brick home, just as dusk settles, feeling the heat stored in each sun-baked brick. The narrow lane smells of dry earth and goat dung. Mud bricks molded from local clay and dried on hot fields have become brittle and cracked. Stepping through the low doorway, you enter a single room where your family awaits. The earthen floor bears traces of yesterday's repairs, fresh layers of clay smeared over older surfaces. Your children sit on reed mats, watching as you knead a handful of damp clay your wife gathered at dawn. She carries it carefully from the riverbank, where water turned clay pliable. Inside, your youngest clutches a carved wooden doll, its features worn from play. You recall how, despite laws granting women rights to own property, your wife's counsel to install stronger supports held little weight when clay and resources were scarce. Now you press new clay into a deep crack near the eastern wall, smoothing edges with your thumb. You bind the fresh mud to the old brick using strands of woven palm fiber, hoping the simple mixture will resist the next rain. Above, small fissures show daylight where bricks have shifted. You glance up and press a wedge of clay into one gap, sealing it until cooler air returns. A distant donkey brays as twilight prayers drift from the temple. Your wife lights a small oil lamp fashioned from animal fat and clay. Its flame sputters, casting flickering shapes across walls. Shadows reveal more imperfections where soot from the hearth collects near holes in the ceiling, and where wind has widened a gap above the hearth's opening. You plan to apply fresh patches there tomorrow at first light, before the sun softens clay beyond repair. You carry a shallow bowl of boiled water to wash soot from blackened corners. In ancient city estates, wealthier families covered walls with lime plaster repelling soot and moisture. Here you rely on mud and effort. You dip a scrap of linen into water and scrub until surfaces pale. Even so, smoke stains cling stubbornly, marking each breath your children take. Your wife hands you a reed broom, and you sweep the floor near the threshold, clearing loose pebbles and debris. These small stones, left unchecked, can erode mortar if rainwater enters. You lean to push a worn basalt step under the doorway, raising it slightly to block floodwater. You found that stone in a dried irrigation channel. Its weight and smooth surface now help prevent an inch of rushing water from creeping indoors. You pack fresh mud beneath it to seal gaps, whispering a silent prayer to Sobek for protection against flood's wrath. Inside, you gather more clay from a low pot. Each handful feels heavy, but you press it into a vertical crack near the hearth where damp appeared after a brief storm. You work quickly, shaping the patch until it blends with older surfaces. Your daughter, standing nearby, offers strips of palm fiber. She knows how to weave them into clay to reinforce weak points. Your son holds a small lamp he lit earlier. His trembling hands betray fear that walls may still fail. You reassure him with a nod and continue smoothing clay over each vulnerable spot. Above the roof consists of palm fronds resting on wooden beams bound with reed rope. You recall how rain once seeped through thatch, dripping onto a child's mat. In wealthier homes, wooden lattices kept out rain and pests, and ceilings featured clay tiles that directed water. But here, you work with what you have. You climb a short cedar ladder made from a single branch split into rungs and press clay at seam intersections. The fronds resist, but you force the paste until it adheres. Your wife watches, calculating where gaps remain, ready to toss fresh clay if needed. Night's chill arrives before you finish. You descend and join your family near the hearth, where embers glow beneath a small pot of barley porridge. Its aroma is faint but familiar. You take a wooden bowl and spoon in a handful. The warm porridge soothes your belly, reminding you that food and shelter form a fragile unity. Your wife divides the rest among children, who eat quietly under the lamp's dim glow. Beyond the hearth, you see a tiny window at head height. No glass, only simple shutters you close against cold. When open, it allows air to flow, but tonight you tether a woven reed curtain across its frame. The barrier keeps drafts at bay, but also traps smoke within. You watch as smoke curls upward, seeking the sole opening in the roof you patched earlier. The hole must remain small to prevent insects and snakes from entering, yet large enough for smoke to escape. You hope these precautions suffice. Your wife stirs embers, coaxing flame with a dried palm frond. You recall how richer households lit multiple hearths and maintained smoke channels. Here you nurture a single flame, mindful that its scant warmth must last until dawn. You rise to inspect the threshold again. Mud around the basalt step feels slightly damp. You press fresh clay into a crevice, tapping firmly until it packs in. Tomorrow, you must build a small embankment of earth outside the doorway, guiding floodwater around this home before it breaches walls. Your daughter drags a small stool beneath a gap high on the northern wall. You place clay in that crack too, sealing a hole where wind and dust once entered. Each patch takes time and clay. You worry that seasonal scarcity will leave you with too little material to repair every vulnerable point. You consider harvesting fresh clay at dawn and returning quickly to strengthen this wall before the sun heats it beyond use. As the lamp wanes, you gather scraps of broken pottery to form a basin, catching stray embers. Sparks that land on the earthen floor could smolder until dawn, igniting dried grass mats. You place pottery shards around the fire's edge, forming a small barrier. Your wife watches nodding respectfully, her authority recognized in this daily struggle to preserve home. You carry the remaining barley porridge into the corner where your son sleeps on a reed mat. He stirs and breathes deeply, his chest rising and falling under thin linen. You sprinkle crushed mint near his head to deter insects drawn to warmth. In larger homes, window screens kept out pests, but here you rely on scattered herbs and constant vigilance. You step back, ensuring no stray sparks drift toward his sleeping mat. Returning to the hearth, you pour a final cup of boiled water into a shallow bowl. You press fingers into the warm liquid, washing sweat and clay from your skin. A damp cloth remains nearby to wipe soot from faces at first light. You whisper a short prayer to Imhotep, hoping illness flees from your family, for damp interiors can fester coughs and fevers. With each repair and careful sweep, you guard against danger from both water and disease. The night grows silent, except for distant dog barks and the whisper of a wind stirring sand beyond walls. You kneel and place a fragment of papyrus on a low shelf, an offering of thanks for each patch that holds. Above it, a piece of dried flax waves. Loosely your wife's promise that despite limitations, this home will endure until you gather resources to rebuild more solidly. You settle next to her, sharing a reed mat softened by straw. The lamp's glow flickers as smoke escapes through the sealed roof, leaving faint trails on the ceiling. You press your palm against patched clay at eye level, feeling its cool firmness. Though walls sag slightly where thicker repairs remain, they stand enclosing your family against storms and desert winds. Your wife places her hand on yours, and for a moment you both linger in quiet triumph within these walls patched by labor and love. Your family finds refuge from floods and flies, from disease and night's chill. You close your eyes, trusting that before dawn you will rise to comb fresh clay from riverbanks and mend each crack against sun and storm. Tonight, though, you rest in fragile peace, knowing these mud brick walls, woven with palm fibers and sealed with hope, guard the promise of another day. You reach your mud brick home just as dusk settles, feeling the heat stored in each sun-baked brick. The earthen floor bears traces of earlier repairs, and dust clings to every surface. Tonight, though, your patched walls shelter family from desert dust and rain. You know a greater task awaits, preparing for the day when your mortal remains join Earth itself. Before dawn, you rise to oversee burial preparations. Neighbors arrive bearing washed linens and natron salts. You unroll strips of linen your wife wove months ago. Each will wrap flesh to deter insects. As you clean the floor with palm fronds, you recall that linen preserves body until spirit journeys onward. Your father places a wooden coffin upon a low platform. He carved hieroglyphs weeks ago, inscribing your name and petitions to Osiris. You kneel with brush and ochre powder, filling each symbol with red pigment so words endure. Family stands by silent, watching the rite of naming secure your identity for eternity. Priests beckon you to anoint the coffin with sacred oil. Fragrant cedar and juniper drip into carved grooves, anointing symbols of Ra so that your spirit may rise with the sun. You breathe deeply, recalling how powerful that scent fills temple halls. A hush descends when the final anointing is complete. As sunlight warms the land, family members carry baskets of bread, jars of beer, and vessels of honey to place inside the coffin. These sustain your bi for the journey. Cousins handle clay pots stuffed with dates and figs. Your mother lays a bowl of lentil stew beside them. Each gift recalls field's bounty and your hearth's warmth. Outside, artisans chisel sandstone to create canopic jars to hold your organs. You inspect each carved lid, crowned with a protective head, Imseti Hapi Duamutef, and kebasenuf, guardians of liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines. The blue glaze of each jar gleams in sunbeams. You place hands on one jar's rim, feeling its weight. Within these vessels, your flesh lies under Osiris's watch. By mid-morning, you assist in preparing your body. Attendants soak cloth in boiled Nile water, strained through many layers. You lie on a low platform, rigid as stone, while they apply natron-infused cloth across your skin, drawing moisture from flesh. Weeks will pass as alabaster jars hold your organs in a chamber carved in the tomb walls. On the third day, wrapping begins. 4 women skilled in linen work stand beside your platform. One secures a strip around your chin and forehead. Another wraps the torso, ensuring layers lie flat. Their hands move with precision across shoulders, knees, ankles. Amulets are placed between layers, an eye of Horus over the heart, a scarab upon the abdomen, its scarlet wings signifying rebirth. You sense each strip as an embrace from generations past. Beneath linen embalmers have inserted scented resin scarabs atop your chest. Soon, the final amulet, a figure of Anubis, will be fixed beside your neck to guide you through duat. When wrapping finishes, you lie swathed like grain offered at harvest, awaiting the next rite. As dusk nears on the 7th day, the coffin is sealed. Priests chant beneath a canopy, calling gods as witnesses. Mourners stand by heads bowed, offering incense. You sense your life's chapter closing as the lid rests on its bed of straw and wood. Linen straps trail between bricks, anchoring you to earth, even as spirit drifts toward eternity. The next dawn, a funeral procession forms. Family members carry torches, incense, and lotus blossoms. You appear among them, though your body lies within wrapped enclosure. Mourners recite dirges that echo off temple pylons. As you move past tombs hidden beneath shifting sands, you see masked robbers watching, eager for treasure. But false passages and sealed shafts protect your tomb. Your journey leads to a deep shaft cut into limestone. At the base, a prepared niche houses your sarcophagus. Priests reveal a polished wooden chest, gilded edges gleaming. They break bread at the threshold, scattering crumbs to feed wandering souls. You step forward, drifting above your form, while a scribe places a Book of the Dead papyrus in your right hand to guard your passage. Laborers lower the coffin on ropes as resin drips in golden rivulets, sealing every seam to keep air and insects at bay. The amber resin's scent mixes with desert breeze. You feel the final shift as the sarcophagus settles within its stone niche. Torches flicker, casting hieroglyphs on walls, scenes of Anubis guiding souls, Osiris seated upon an alabaster throne. You know these images protect you now. Over days, workers fill the shaft's entrance with mud brick and stone. They set a stela bearing your name and titles at the head, marking your burial. To discourage looters, they reshape paths so sand covers tracks. The tomb's entrance blends into dunes like a mirage. The pyramid of your ancestor stands beyond, watching over you like a sentinel, a reminder that family legacy endures. At last, a flat slab seals the shaft mouth. Hidden from sight, it seals your body within. Subtle ripples of sand begin to veil any sign of life. The desert winds erase footprints, leaving only shifting dunes as witness. You awaken to darkness, cushioned by stone and linen. Torchlight from above reaches only as memory. Now far below, your spirit finds release. The painted walls within depict daily life harvest dance offerings, gods welcoming souls. Above, the jackal-headed Anubis and the vulture of Nekbet guide you. Each illustration reassures that your existence continues beyond dust and decay. In this chamber, you rest within clay and stone, assured that your soul journeys on to join the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Outside your home, earlier night air felt chill upon patched walls. Now, within the tomb, sand's silence replaces wind. Your tomb, crafted by labor and belief, stands hidden beneath dunes. In both home and burial chamber, woven clay and linen bind body and spirit, ensuring that though flesh fades, memory endures in hieroglyphs the desert's embrace.